All right, guys, free to choose. Chapter 8, Who Protects the Worker? This one's called Labor Unions. Labor Unions. So chapter 8, Who Protects the Worker? Labor Unions. One of the most egregious misuses of language is the use of labor as if it were synonymous with labor unions, as it reports that labor opposes such and such a proposed law or that the legislative program of labor is such and such. That is a double error. In the first place, more than 3 out of 4 workers in the United States are not members of labor unions. Even in Great Britain, where labor unions have long been far stronger than in the United States, most workers are not members of labor unions. In the second place, it is an error to identify the interests of a labor union with the interests of its members. There is a connection and a close connection for most unions most of the time. However, there are enough cases of union officials acting to benefit themselves at the expense of their members, both in legal ways and by misuse and misappropriation of union funds. Yeah, like the labor fucking president being rich as hell. To warn against the automatic equating of the interests of labor unions with the interests of labor union members, let alone with the interests of labor as a whole. This misuse of language is both a cause and effect of a general tendency to overestimate the influence and role of labor unions. Union actions are visible and newsworthy. They often generate front-page headlines and full-scale coverage on the nightly TV programs, the higgling and bargaining of the market, as Adam Smith termed it, whereby the wages of most workers in the United States are determined as far less visible. Whereby the wages of most workers in the United States are determined as far less visible, draws less attention, and its importance is as a result greatly underestimated. The misuse of language contributes also to the belief that labor unions are a product of modern industrial development. They are nothing of the kind. On the contrary, they are a throwback to a pre-industrial period, to the guilds that were the characteristic form of organization of both merchants and craftsmen in the cities and city-states that grew out of the feudal period. Indeed, the modern labor union can be traced back even further, nearly 25,000, 2,500 years, to an agreement reached among medical men in Greece. Hippocrates, universally regarded as the father of modern medicine, was born around 460 before Christ on the island of Kos, or Kos, C-O-S, one of the Greek islands only a few miles away from the coast of Asia Minor. At the time, it was a thriving island and already a medical center. After studying medicine in Kos, Hippocrates traveled widely, developing a great reputation as a physician, particularly for his ability to end plagues and epidemics. After a time, he returned to Kos, where he established or took charge of a medical school and healing center. He taught all who wished to learn, so as long as they paid the fees. His center became famous throughout the Greek world, attracting students, patients, and physicians from far and wide. When Hippocrates died at the age of 104, or so legend has it, Kos was full of medical people, his students and disciples. Competition for patients was fierce, and not surprisingly, a concerted movement apparently developed to do something about it. In modern terminology, to rationalize the discipline in order to eliminate unfair competition. Accordingly, some 20 years or so after Hippocrates died, again as legend has it, the medical people got together and constructed a code of conduct. They named it the Hippocratic Oath after their old teacher and master. Hippocratic, fuck, excuse me, guys. The Hippocratic Oath. And their old teacher, okay, therefore, on the island of Kos, and increasingly throughout the rest of the world, every newly trained physician, before he could start practice, was required to subscribe to that oath. That custom continues today as a part of the graduation ceremony of most medical schools in the United States. Like most professional codes, business trade agreements, and labor union contracts, the Hippocratic Oath was full of fine ideals for protecting the patient. I will use my power to help the sick to the best of my ability and judgment. Whenever I go into a house, I will go to help the sick, and never with the intention of doing harm or injury. I guess that's part of the oath. and so on. The Hippocratic Oath. I'm gonna highlight that. Milton Friedman is gonna bring some up right here. But it also contains a few sleepers. Consider this one. I will hand on precepts, lectures, and all other learning to my sons, to those of my teachers, and to those pupils duly apprenticed and sworn, and to none others. I will hand on precepts, lectures, and all other learning to my sons, to those of my teachers, and those pupils duly apprenticed and sworn, and to none others. Today we would call that the prelude to a closed shop. Or listen to this one referring to patients suffering from the agonizing disease of kidney or bladder stones. I will not cut even for the stone, but I will leave such procedures to the practitioners of that craft. A nice marketing sharing agreement between physicians and surgeons. Hippocrates, we conjecture, must turn in his grave when a new class of medical men takes that oath. He is supposed to have taught everyone who demonstrated the interest and paid his tuition. He would presumably have objected strongly to the kind of restrictive practices that physicians all over the world have adopted from that time to this in order to protect themselves against competition. The American Medical Association is seldom regarded as a labor union, and it is much more than the ordinary labor union. It renders important services to its members and to the medical profession as a whole. However, it is also a labor union, and in our judgment has been one of the most successful unions in the country. For decades, it kept down the number of physicians, kept up the costs of medical care, and prevented competition with duly apprenticed and sworn physicians by people from outside the profession, all of course in the name of helping the patient. At this point in the book, it hardly needs repeating that the leaders of medicine have been sincere in their belief that restricting entry into medicine would help the patient. By this time, we are familiar with the capacity that all of us have to believe that what is in our interests is in the social interests. It's not true. Mm. As government has come to play a larger role in medicine and to finance a large scale of medical costs, the power of the American Medical Association has declined. Another monopolistic group, government bureaucrats, have been replacing it. We believe that this result has been brought on partly by the actions of organized medicine itself. These developments in medicine are important and may have far-reaching implications for the kind and cost of healthcare that will be available to us in the future. However, this chapter is about labor, not medicine, so we shall refer only to those aspects of medical economics that illustrate principles applicable to all labor union activity. We shall put to one side, this is about labor, not medicine, so we shall refer only to those aspects of medical economics that illustrate principles applicable to all labor union activity. We shall put to one side other important and fascinating questions about current developments in the organization of healthcare. Mm.